Writers choose interesting adjectives and adverbs to express their ideas precisely. Let's practice adding interesting adjectives and adverbs to our own writing. Make sure that you have the Learn Zillion practice sheet in front of you. You'll be using it throughout this video. First, let's review two parts of speech. What is an adjective? Remember that an adjective is a word that describes or modifies a noun. Modify means to further explain something. Adverbs are similar to adjectives, except that adverbs describe or modify adjectives, verbs, or other adverbs. Adjectives and adverbs play an important role in making our writing more precise, so the reader has a more understandable image of what we are trying to express. Let's try to pick out the adjectives and adverbs in a few phrases. In the first phrase, the determined student, I know that student is a noun because a student is a person. The word that modifies or further explains student is determined. Because determined is modifying the noun student, I know that it is an adjective. In the phrase quietly tiptoed, the word tiptoed is my action word or my verb. Quietly describes tiptoed, so because quietly is describing a verb, I know it has to be an adverb. And finally, in the phrase the pretty baby, I know that baby is a noun, and pretty is the word that is describing the baby. Therefore, pretty must be an adjective. Without adjectives and adverbs, the nouns and verbs in our writing might seem vague or even a little lifeless. Let's practice adding adjectives and adverbs in a few sentences. The girl had a wagon. Right away, I see two nouns that I could further explain, girl and wagon. When I picture the girl and the wagon in my mind's eye, how do they look? Does my writing match that description? Well, in my mind's eye, the girl is little and the wagon is rusty, old, and red. These adjectives have made my nouns much more precise, and my writing has come alive. Try the next two sentences on your own. In the girl pulled her wagon, try modifying girl, pulled, and wagon. In the girl pulled her wagon down the sidewalk, modify girl, pulled, wagon, and sidewalk. Pause the video and add adjectives and adverbs to the sentences. Press play when you're done. Okay, great job. Let me share my revisions with you. In the second sentence, I added slowly as an adverb. In the last sentence, I used cracked and uneven as adjectives to describe the sidewalk. Let's take a look at the beginning of a short story I drafted about a girl who thinks she is being chased. When I reread this part, I noticed that my story isn't as suspenseful as I thought it would be. Read my draft and see if you noticed how plain my writing sounds. Pause the video to read my draft, and then press play when you are done. Okay, let's take a look at the beginning of my draft. The girl walked up the steps. She heard something behind her. The first thing I'm going to ask myself is, are there nouns, verbs, or adverbs I can modify? Let's underline them together on your practice sheet. I can really see what the girl in my story is doing, kind of like watching a movie in my mind. I can see her walking and I can picture the steps. I can see how she is surprised by the noise, and I can hear that noise too. So the words I'm going to underline are walked, steps, heard, and something. Next, I ask myself, what adjectives or adverbs match the image in my mind? When I find lifeless verbs in my writing, I know I can think about two kinds of adverbs, those that add some vivid detail and those that relate to time. I need to really think about describing the timing and the images in my story and what happens to the girl and what's happening around her. She's really scared and my setting is a creepy old house. How did she walk up those steps? What did those steps sound like when she walked up them? Did the noise she heard behind her surprise her? What did that noise behind her sound like? Press pause and try to come up with your own ideas. Add adjectives and adverbs to the sentences. Press play when you're done. Okay, let's read my new sentence. The girl reluctantly walked up the creaky wooden steps. Suddenly, she heard something loud and piercing behind her. Notice how I modified the way she walked upstairs and how the steps sounded. I used a time adverb to describe how sudden the noise was, and then I used adjectives to describe what she heard. Doesn't it sound much more vivid now? Let's move on to the next sentence. Which words can I modify to make my writing more vivid? Underline them on your practice sheet. And now ask, which interesting adjectives and adverbs can I add? Pause the video and add adjectives and adverbs to the sentences. Press play when you're done. Great work! I wrote, she stopped and quickly turned around, but no one was there. After she found some courage, she finally decided to slowly keep walking up to the cold, dark second floor. The words I chose to modify were turned, decided, walking, and second floor. Okay, here's the next section of my draft. Rewrite this section on your own. Remember to focus on seeing the image in your mind's eye. Then search for the right adjectives and adverbs to match that image. Pause the video and add adjectives and adverbs to the sentences. Press play when you're done. Okay, great work. I'll bet your reader has a much better picture of what you are trying to say. Let me share my revision with you. Each of her heavy steps took a very long time, and she didn't think she would ever reach the distant top. When she heard the terrifying noise again, she froze. The words I chose to modify were steps, long, top, and noise. Okay, I've worked my way through my draft asking myself which nouns and verbs can I modify to make my writing more vivid, and which interesting adjectives and adverbs can I add. Now my revision is complete. Press pause and read my revisions to yourself and see how much more interesting adjectives and adverbs make my draft. Now it's your turn. Identify the nouns and verbs that can be modified in these two sentences. Then rewrite the sentences using adjectives and adverbs that match the image in your mind. These are on your practice sheet. Pause the video and rewrite the sentences. Press play when you are done. Great work! Now try editing your own writing. Find two sentences from your writing where you could add adjectives or adverbs to modify nouns and verbs. Use adjectives and adverbs that help you to match the image in your mind more precisely. From now on, remember to always do this in your writing. Adding adjectives and adverbs will make your writing more interesting by helping your ideas come alive.